This story is titled, "To Claim My Fortune, My Sister's Classmate Fabricated a Child's Paternity, but having never been intimate with her, I swiftly exposed her lie without a DNA test and used my wealth to destroy her life." Hey Reddit, I'm a 28-year-old mortician living in Denver, and I've got an absolutely insane situation that I need to unpack. This past week has completely turned my life upside down, transforming what was once a normal existence into something that feels like it was ripped straight from a bad soap opera. It all started about a week ago when my sister Rachel began blowing up my phone. We've always been close since childhood, the kind of siblings who share secrets and have each other's backs no matter what. But this time, her texts and calls weren't the usual friendly check-ins. Instead, she was absolutely furious, demanding to know why I wasn't taking responsibility for something. I had absolutely no idea what she was talking about. After several confusing exchanges, I finally pieced together what was happening. Apparently, her college roommate and best friend Madison, who's only 20 years old, had posted on Instagram claiming that I got her pregnant. Yes, me, her best friend's older brother. I immediately checked the post, and sure enough, there it was. A complete announcement with pictures of positive pregnancy tests, and she had even tagged me in the post for good measure. I was completely floored. What kind of alternate reality was I suddenly living in? Here's the thing that made this situation even more bizarre. I have never even met Madison in person. The closest we've ever come to interacting was me occasionally seeing her on FaceTime calls with Rachel during holidays, or hearing Rachel talk about her now and then. That's it. I've never spoken to her directly, let alone been in the same room with her, and certainly never been intimate with her. I was sitting in my office at the funeral home, having just finished the day's paperwork, when my phone started buzzing nonstop with notifications. Rachel wasn't just upset. She had gone into full detective mode, completely convinced that Madison was telling the truth. She kept repeating phrases like, "Madison's a good Christian girl," and insisting that she would never make this up. Meanwhile, I was still trying to process this circus, drinking my third cup of black coffee with hands shaking from stress. How do you even defend yourself against something this crazy? I tried explaining everything to Rachel again, showing her my empty Instagram DMs as proof that Madison and I had never communicated. But she wasn't having any of it. She refused to believe me, and things only got worse by the minute. Rachel started throwing threats around, saying she would tell our super traditional parents if I didn't help Madison financially. Our parents are old-school Catholics, the type to believe everything they hear at first, and they would probably have a heart attack over this kind of news. I couldn't let that happen, but I also couldn't give in to this madness. I sat staring at my phone screen, feeling my blood pressure rise with each passing minute. Madison hadn't just told a small lie. She had created an entire fictional narrative. According to Rachel's angry texts, Madison claimed we'd been secret Instagram lovers. She said I had flown to her college town 3 times and that we had romantic meetups at some fancy hotel. Now, according to her story, I was ghosting her after learning about the pregnancy. She even added this clever detail about me deleting all our messages to cover my tracks. How convenient. The truth is, I've never even been to her college town. I don't know which hotel she's talking about. I've never followed her on any social media platform. But somehow, Rachel was buying this soap opera script without question. While sitting in my car during my lunch break, I almost choked on my sandwich when Rachel sent another wall of texts. I suggested getting a paternity test just to end this nightmare, but apparently that was offensive to Madison and would insult her integrity. What integrity? If she was so sure I was the father, why not prove it? None of this added up, but Rachel was acting like I was the crazy one for wanting actual proof. I kept replaying everything in my head while driving between funeral homes. Rachel and I used to be inseparable. We even got matching tattoos when we were younger. Now she was choosing Madison over blood. She wasn't just taking sides, she was leading the charge against me. Her texts were becoming more aggressive by the hour, each one bringing new accusations. She kept saying I needed to man up and claimed Madison was suffering enough. Meanwhile, I was literally dealing with dead bodies at work and this drama at the same time. I tried explaining reality again, but it was like talking to a brick wall with perfectly styled hair and a vendetta against logic. By this point, I was completely stuck in this mess. I found myself sitting in my dark office after hours, rain beating against the windows, feeling trapped in a situation I couldn't escape. No matter what I said, Rachel remained convinced of my guilt. And then the worst part hit me. She was threatening to tell our parents. They're old school, the type to believe everything at first glance. While I knew they'd eventually believe me, the stress and chaos it would bring wasn't something I needed right now, especially when I was already dealing with 3 funerals this week. I needed to find a way to prove my innocence without dragging everyone else into this mess. But how? Madison was still refusing that paternity test, and without it, I had no way to definitively prove I wasn't involved. By the end of the day, I was mentally drained and emotionally exhausted. Everything hurt. I had spent 5 hours arguing with Rachel, trying to get her to see reason, but it was like talking to a cemetery statue. Every time I pushed back, she came at me harder, saying I was dodging responsibility and disrespecting Madison. Meanwhile, I was stuck wondering how someone could pull off a lie this big and actually make it stick. That night at 2 a.m., I couldn't sleep. I found myself sitting in my kitchen, staring at leftover Chinese takeout, trying to figure out my next move. Confronting Madison directly felt like a trap. Getting my parents involved would be like throwing gasoline on the fire. But doing nothing wasn't an option either. I felt like I was walking through my own morgue. One wrong move and everything would crash down. All I knew was that I needed to find a way to clear my name. But how do you prove you didn't do something when there's no evidence either way? It felt impossible. The worst part of all this was that the person pushing hardest against me was my own sister. The one person I thought would have my back was now leading the charge against me. I took another sip of cold coffee, watched the city lights through my window, and wondered how many other people out there were dealing with their own personal hells. The next morning after this nightmare began, my alarm clock showed 6:30 a.m. I had just finished the morning prep at the funeral home and decided to check my phone during my coffee break. What I saw made my stomach drop. Everything had exploded overnight. Notifications were flooding my screen, Instagram was going crazy, and random numbers were texting me. Madison's post about me had gone viral. Her pregnancy announcement was everywhere, with dozens of comments from strangers. Some offered her support with messages like, "Stay strong, mama," and "You don't need him, girl," while others were straight up attacking me, calling me every name in the book and accusing me of abandoning her. It wasn't just her followers anymore. My own Instagram had become a war zone with people tagging me everywhere, in posts, stories, and comments, all demanding answers. Some of Rachel's friends had jumped in too. People I'd barely spoken to in my life, all suddenly disgusted with me. One of them even slid into my DMs to write a whole essay about how men like me ruin lives, and that I better step up before it's too late. I couldn't believe how fast this had spread. I sat in my office, staring at the embalming equipment, thinking that dealing with the dead was easier than this social media circus. This wasn't just some small drama anymore. Madison had declared full-scale war, and I couldn't even defend myself properly. I had no proof to show, just my word against hers. But when you're labeled the bad guy, no one wants to hear your side. Things got even worse when I discovered that Rachel had joined the online crusade. She wasn't just commenting on Madison's posts anymore. She was making her own now. She posted a story about family betrayal and how disappointed she was in certain people, obviously aimed at me. She started tagging me in deep posts with vague quotes like, "Sometimes people show you who they really are, and blood isn't thicker than accountability." It was a full public execution, and I was the main attraction. I've never been one for social media drama. The idea of fighting back online felt wrong. Plus, what would I even say? I had nothing concrete to back me up, just my word against Madison's, and she was running the whole show. Throughout the day, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Friends started calling, wanting to know what was going on. Most believed me when I explained, but even they admitted it looked bad from the outside. "You need to clear this up," one friend said while I was literally preparing a body for viewing. How was I supposed to clear anything up when Madison wouldn't take that paternity test? I felt trapped in a nightmare where truth didn't matter anymore. By afternoon, the stress was crushing me. I couldn't focus on work, and my phone kept lighting up with every new notification making me jump. People I hadn't talked to in years were all messaging me, some asking if the rumors were true, others trying to be supportive, but most just wanted the gossip or to straight up judge me. I finally snapped and blocked both Madison and Rachel on Instagram, hoping it would stop the flood of messages. Spoiler alert, it didn't. Madison kept posting updates and still finding ways to tag me, and people kept finding new ways to reach me. It was relentless, like dealing with an open casket that wouldn't stay closed. Then, Rachel sent me this massive text while I was in the middle of a funeral consultation. I had to excuse myself to read it. She was accusing me of being a coward, saying that blocking them was just proof of my guilt. "If you had nothing to hide, you wouldn't be running," she wrote. She went on about how I was making everything worse, and that the least I could do was talk to Madison directly and work something out with her. That last part made my blood boil. Work something out? What was there to work out when I hadn't done anything? I was standing in the funeral home bathroom, gripping my phone so hard it might break, unable to believe that Rachel still couldn't see how insane this whole situation was. She wasn't just defending Madison anymore. She was going out of her way to make me look worse, even though she knew for a fact that I'd never met Madison in person. What kind of Twilight Zone was this, where your own sister believes a stranger over you? What really pushed me over the edge was discovering Madison's newest posts while on my lunch break. I was eating a cold sandwich in my office when I saw them. She wasn't posting screenshots of our supposed conversations, because those don't exist, but instead was sharing random stuff like pictures of pregnancy tests and doctor's appointment confirmations, along with some vague texts that didn't even involve me. She captioned them with dramatic statements like, "This is what I'm dealing with while he hides, and some people think they can erase their mistakes, but life doesn't work that way." People were eating it up like candy. The comments kept rolling in, with more and more people tagging me in their posts and stories. It felt like I was being publicly executed for a crime I didn't commit. I couldn't take it anymore. I stepped outside into the cold air and called Rachel one last time, trying to talk some sense into her. Big mistake. She started yelling immediately, going on about how Madison was a good person who didn't deserve to be treated like this. I told her to stop and think about how insane this all sounded. How could I be the father when I'd never even met Madison? But Rachel kept doubling down, saying things like, "You're just mad because you got caught, and she doesn't need to lie about something like this." I finally lost my patience and hung up on her. The first time I'd ever done that. But I just couldn't handle this anymore. Even after the call ended, I couldn't shake the anger and frustration. My own sister, who used to share secrets with me, was now leading this witch hunt against her own blood. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I found myself sitting in my dark apartment at 1 a.m. with a cup of whiskey in my hand, going through Madison's Instagram, trying to figure out why she'd chosen me as her target. Was it because of my job? Funeral directors make decent money, or maybe because I'm Rachel's brother. An easy target to reach? Or was it just random bad luck? Whatever the reason, she turned my life into a complete disaster. I knew I couldn't just let this slide, but I also didn't know how to fight back without making everything worse. If I lashed out online, it would just add fuel to the fire. If I stayed quiet, people would keep assuming I was guilty. Either way, Madison was winning, and I was stuck in the middle of a storm I didn't create. My head was spinning from all this, and the stress was overwhelming, like having 10 funerals in one day. I couldn't see a way out. All I knew was that I needed to find some kind of proof, something that would show everyone the truth. But right then, I felt completely alone in this fight. That's why I found myself writing this at 3 a.m., staring at my computer screen while the city slept outside, hoping for some outside perspective on how to handle this mess before it completely ruined my life. The next morning hit different. I had just finished morning prep with a new client when I checked my phone and instantly regretted it. Things had escalated even more overnight. My hands were trembling while making coffee as I saw the notifications exploding like never before. Instagram had gone completely nuclear, with texts from random numbers flooding in. Madison's post about me, the one where she tagged me, had picked up serious steam overnight. There were dozens of new comments, many from complete strangers. Some were trying to support her with messages like, "Stay strong, mama," and "You're better off without him," while others were straight up attacking me, calling me every horrible name imaginable and accusing me of being the worst kind of person for abandoning her. But it wasn't just her followers anymore. My own Instagram had become ground zero for a full-scale attack. People were tagging me everywhere, in posts, stories, comments, all demanding answers. All of Rachel's college friends, people I'd barely said hello to, were now jumping on the hate train. One of them even sent me a direct message, writing this novel-length paragraph about how men like me ruin lives, and how I better step up before it's too late. I stood in my office, looking at the morning fog outside, and couldn't believe how quickly everything had spiraled. This wasn't just some petty accusation anymore. Madison had effectively declared war, and I couldn't even defend myself properly because I had no proof. All I could do was tell the truth. But when someone's already painted you as the villain, no one wants to hear your side of the story. Things got even worse by lunch break. I was cleaning my tools at the mortuary when I saw that Rachel had joined the online attack. She wasn't just commenting on Madison's posts anymore. She was making her own crusade now. She posted a dramatic story about family betrayal and how disappointed she was in certain people, obviously talking about me. She kept tagging me in these deep posts, sharing vague quotes like, "Sometimes people show you who they really are, and blood isn't thicker than accountability." Real philosophical hours with Rachel. It was a full-on public shaming campaign, and I was the main exhibit. I've never been one for social media drama. The idea of clapping back online felt wrong, plus what would I even post? I had nothing concrete to back me up, just my word against Madison's, and she was already running the whole narrative. Throughout the day, my phone kept blowing up. I couldn't even focus on work. A few friends called to check what was happening. Most believed me when I explained, but even they admitted it looked really bad from the outside. "You need to clear this up fast," one friend told me while I was literally preparing for a wake. How was I supposed to clear anything up when the only person who could prove I wasn't involved, Madison, was refusing to get that paternity test? I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare where the truth didn't even matter anymore. By afternoon, the stress was crushing me. I couldn't even focus on basic embalming work and kept making rookie mistakes. My phone wouldn't stop lighting up with notifications. Every buzz made me jump. People I hadn't spoken to in years were all sliding into my DMs, some asking if it was true, others just being nosy, most straight-up judgmental. I finally snapped while doing paperwork and blocked both Madison and Rachel on Instagram, hoping it would stop the flood of messages. Spoiler: it didn't. Madison kept posting updates, still finding ways to tag me, and people kept finding new ways to reach me. It was relentless, like a zombie horde that wouldn't stay dead. Then Rachel sent me this huge text. She accused me of being cowardly for blocking them, saying it was just more proof that I was guilty. She typed out stuff like, "If you had nothing to hide and you wouldn't be running from this." She insisted that the least you can do is talk to Madison directly and work something out. That last part really got under my skin. Work something out? What was there to work out when I hadn't done anything? Rachel couldn't even see how ridiculous this was. She wasn't just defending Madison, she was actively trying to make me look worse, even though she knew damn well I'd never met Madison in person. What really sent me over the edge, though, was when Madison started posting these screenshots. Not of our supposed conversations, because those don't exist, but random stuff like her pregnancy tests, doctor's appointments, and vague texts that don't involve me at all. She captioned them with dramatic statements like, "This is what I'm dealing with while he hides." And some people think they can erase their mistakes, but life doesn't work that way. People were eating it up like free candy. The comments kept rolling in, with more people tagging me in their posts and stories. It felt like I was being publicly crucified for something I had no part in. By the end of the day, I couldn't take it anymore. The last client had just left the funeral home, and I was sitting alone in my office when I decided to make one last attempt. I called Rachel, hoping to talk some sense into her. Biggest mistake of the day. The call didn't go well. She started yelling immediately, going on about how Madison was such a good person and how she didn't deserve to be treated like this. I tried to keep my voice steady while telling her to stop and think about how insane this all sounded. How could I possibly be the father when I've never even met Madison in person? But Rachel just kept doubling down, saying things like, "You're just mad because you got caught, and she doesn't need to lie about something like this." I couldn't take it anymore and ended up hanging up on her. The first time I've ever done that. The call left me shaking. I couldn't shake the anger and frustration. That night I went through Madison's Instagram again, trying to figure out why she picked me as her target. Was it because I have a stable job? Because I'm Rachel's brother? An easy person to reach? Or just random bad luck? Whatever the reason, she'd turned my life into a complete disaster. I knew I couldn't just let this slide, but I also didn't know how to fight back without making everything worse. If I lashed out online, it would just add fuel to the fire. If I stayed quiet, people would keep assuming I was guilty. Either way, Madison was winning, and I was stuck in the middle of a storm I didn't create. My head was spinning, and the stress was overwhelming. I couldn't see a way out. All I knew was that I needed to find some kind of proof, something that would show everyone the truth. But right then, I felt completely alone in this fight. That's why I found myself typing this at 3 a.m., desperately needing some outside perspective. Just when I thought this mess couldn't get any weirder, it definitely did. But things were finally starting to get clearer. The other morning, I woke up at the crack of dawn, getting ready for an early morning viewing. I checked my phone out of habit, and saw an unexpected DM on Instagram from some guy named Tom. At first, I thought it was just another hater and almost ignored it. But something felt different about this one. The guy introduced himself as Madison's ex-boyfriend and claimed he had something important to tell me. Honestly, I was paranoid at this point. This whole situation had me suspicious of everyone, and I wasn't in the mood for more drama. But I decided to hear him out anyway. Tom explained everything. He said he and Madison had been together for 6 years, all through high school and into college too. They broke up recently, and it wasn't a friendly split either. According to him, their relationship ended because Madison cheated. She had met some guy on a dating app, and Tom found out through mutual friends. He confronted her about it. She admitted everything, and that was the end of their relationship. But here's where it gets interesting. I was standing in my office, coffee getting cold, as I read the most insane part. Tom said Madison had tried the same thing with him just a few weeks ago. After they broke up, she called him and told him she was pregnant, insisting the baby was his. She started pressuring him to propose, throwing in this whole speech about how they could make it work and how they owed it to the baby to be a family. My hands were shaking while reading his messages. Everything was starting to make sense now. Tom told me he didn't believe her. He knew she had cheated and had no clue how many other guys were involved. He said he told her straight up to get a paternity test first before even having that conversation. Madison's response? She refused completely, called it demeaning, and accused him of not trusting her. Sound familiar? That's when Tom cut all ties and told her he wanted nothing to do with her. The way Tom described it, Madison was grasping at straws after he shut her down. She must have realized she didn't have a backup plan, so when Tom was out of the picture, she started looking for someone else to pin the pregnancy on. And that's where I came in. Tom's theory made sense. He said Madison picked me because I was an easy target. I'm stable, have a good job, and I'm her best friend's brother, which gave her a connection she could use to make her story more believable. Then Tom dropped another bomb. He said Madison had mentioned me before during their relationship. Apparently, she thought I was cute and had joked about what it would be like to date me. I was standing in the morgue prep room, reading all this and feeling sick to my stomach. It was weird hearing that, but it made sense in a twisted way. Madison wasn't just lying randomly. She'd carefully chosen her target. And thanks to her scheming, my life was in complete disarray. Tom said he reached out because he felt bad for me. He had seen Madison's Instagram posts, knew she was lying, and figured I was going through the same thing he did. He wanted to help. I didn't know whether to be grateful or angry that Madison had done this before and was now dragging me into it. Tom sent me screenshots of their conversations about the pregnancy. I took my lunch break to read through them, my half-eaten sandwich forgotten on my desk. The messages were almost identical to what Rachel had described Madison saying about me. Claims about ghosting, accusations of erasing messages, refusing to step up. It was like she had a script she was following word for word, just tweaking it enough to fit her new target. The more I read, the angrier I got. Madison wasn't scared or desperate. She was calculating. After going through everything Tom sent, I asked him what he thought I should do. He said he didn't blow up the whole thing when it happened to him because he still cared about Madison, even after what she did. But he wasn't emotionally tied to this anymore. He told me to take whatever steps I needed to protect myself. I was sitting in my office, staring at the cemetery through the window, when I got an idea. If Madison was refusing that paternity test, maybe I could use Tom's story to force her hand. I asked if he'd be willing to share his side with Rachel or Madison's parents. He hesitated at first, but eventually agreed. He said he didn't want direct involvement, but was fine with me sharing the screenshots if it would help clear my name. I finally felt like I had something solid. It wasn't proof that I wasn't involved, but it was proof that Madison had done this before, which showed her story wasn't as airtight as she made it seem. I spent the rest of the day organizing everything. Between preparing 2 bodies for viewing, I worked on Tom's evidence, carefully arranging all his messages, putting together the screenshots, and creating a detailed timeline of events. I wanted to make sure I had all the facts straight before confronting Rachel or anyone else. I worked late into the night. The morgue was quiet except for the hum of equipment, the perfect place to focus. I finally finished drafting a message to Rachel, explaining everything Tom told me and attaching all the screenshots as proof. I kept it short and factual, avoiding any emotional stuff, just presenting the hard evidence. I took a deep breath and hit send, then waited. The clock ticked on the wall, but there was no immediate response from Rachel. Not surprising, really. I figured she needed time to process. If she wouldn't believe me, Maybe she'd believe someone who had been in the exact same position. I sat there in my office, a whirlwind of emotions hitting me. I felt relief at finally having solid proof, yet frustrated that things had spiraled this far. Tom's help was a step forward, but I knew the road ahead was still going to be messy. The next morning, I woke up to Rachel's response. My hands were shaking while opening it. Her reply was frustratingly short and completely dismissive. She claimed Tom's screenshots proved nothing and said Madison had already told her about him, calling him a toxic ex who was just trying to ruin her life. Then she hit me with the classic, "Why would Madison lie? And what does she have to gain?" That question nearly made me throw my phone across the embalming room. At this point, it was crystal clear that Rachel wasn't going to change her mind. She was completely sold on Madison's story, and no amount of evidence or logic was going to convince her otherwise. I realized I needed a new approach. I had to bypass Rachel entirely. The only people left who might rein Madison in were her parents. I wasn't thrilled about the idea. I'd never spoken to Madison's parents before. According to Tom, they weren't exactly warm and fuzzy. "They're intense," he said. I wasn't sure what that meant exactly, but it felt like my only option left. I got Madison's mom's contact info from Tom, along with his warning about their strictness. I spent the morning between services putting together everything I wanted to say. I wrote out a complete timeline of events, compiled all the screenshots Tom sent, and rehearsed how I'd explain the situation. I didn't want to come across as aggressive or too emotional. I just needed to be clear and factual. Around lunchtime, I finally worked up the nerve. I stepped into my private office, away from grieving families, and called Madison's mom. She answered on the second ring, sounding polite but wary, like she couldn't figure out why her daughter's roommate's brother was calling her. I introduced myself quickly and got straight to the point. I explained how Madison had been accusing me of being her baby's father, but was refusing to get a paternity test. I told her about Tom, too, how he went through a nearly identical situation just weeks earlier and mentioned that Tom had proof Madison was lying. I offered to send her the screenshots. There was a long silence on the other end. I could hear her breathing. It felt like I was delivering bad news to a family, something I'm unfortunately used to in my line of work. When Madison's mom finally spoke, her tone had completely changed. She said she had no idea any of this was happening and apologized for the stress it had caused me. She asked me to send her everything I had, screenshots, timelines, anything that could help her understand what was going on. I agreed immediately, my hand still shaking as I hung up. I forwarded her the email I had prepared, the same one Rachel had dismissed. The hour that followed felt like an eternity. I tried to stay busy with paperwork, but my mind was racing. Then Madison's mom called back. This time she sounded livid, not at me, but at Madison. She said she had no idea her daughter was capable of something like this and assured me they would handle it immediately. She apologized again for the trouble and promised to keep me updated. I hung up feeling a mix of relief and unease. It was good to finally have someone on my side, someone who could actually do something. But I still had no idea how Madison or Rachel would react when they found out I went to her parents. The next day at work, I received another call from Madison's parents between showing caskets to clients. They had spoken to Madison and confirmed everything I suspected. She had lied about me being the father. They apologized profusely for all the trouble she had caused and assured me they were taking steps to address her behavior. They explained that Madison was now back home with them and wouldn't be returning to college for the foreseeable future. Then they told me something interesting. Madison had tried to shift the blame, claiming Tom and I were ganging up on her and trying to make her look bad. Her parents weren't buying it, though. They told me they were deeply disappointed in her and were planning to cut her off financially unless she got her act together. Hearing all this felt surreal. Just a week ago, I was minding my own business, dealing with normal funeral home stuff. Now I was at the center of this ridiculous drama, like I was living in some weird alternate reality. By the end of the day, I felt things were finally starting to settle. But I still couldn't shake this feeling that this wasn't over yet. Rachel isn't the type to let things go, and I was sure that when she found out, she wouldn't stay silent. And Madison had already proven she was willing to go to extreme lengths to get what she wanted. For now, though, I was just grateful to have some breathing room. Standing in the quiet funeral home after everyone had left, I didn't know what the future held, but I hoped this was the beginning of the end of this nightmare. Remember that hope I mentioned? It only lasted about 24 hours. The next morning after the parents' call, I had just finished my morning embalming when Rachel showed up unannounced at my apartment. I was still wearing my work clothes and hadn't even had breakfast. She was absolutely fuming. The first words out of her mouth were, "I can't believe you called Madison's parents. Do you even care about anyone but yourself?" I didn't even let her inside. I stood in the doorway like a bouncer and told her flat out that I wasn't going to have this conversation again. I did what I had to do to clear my name, and if she couldn't understand that, she needed to leave. But Rachel wasn't backing down. She never does. She accused me of ruining Madison's life, saying she'd been forced to leave school and that her parents were threatening to cut her off financially. Apparently, Madison had confessed to lying about me being the father, but tried to frame it differently. She told Rachel it was a desperate move because she was scared and didn't know how to handle the situation. I told Rachel that Madison had brought this on herself. If she hadn't lied about me, none of this would have happened. But Rachel didn't want to hear it. She kept saying I should have just let it blow over instead of escalating things by going to Madison's parents. She kept repeating the same lines about how I had overreacted and made things worse for everyone. At one point, she even said, "You've completely destroyed any chance Madison had of fixing her life. Do you even feel bad about what you've done?" That was the final straw for me. I told Rachel straight up that if she couldn't see how messed up this was, how Madison's actions had hurt not just me, but also Tom and her own parents, then maybe she wasn't as rational as I thought she was. Rachel got absolutely mad. She stormed off down the hallway and slammed the building door so hard that pictures rattled on my wall. I figured that was the end of it, at least for the day, and went back to getting ready for work. But later that evening, I got a call from my mom. I felt my stomach drop. Rachel had gone straight to our parents and spun the whole thing to make me look like the villain. She told them I'd gone after Madison and ruined her life, conveniently leaving out the part where Madison had lied about me being the father of her baby. My mom was upset, asking why I didn't come to her and Dad first before taking things into my own hands. I spent the next hour between preparing bodies, explaining the entire situation from start to finish. How Madison lied. How she refused a paternity test. How Rachel sided with her without any proof. And how Tom's story confirmed Madison was a serial liar. Mom listened quietly. I could tell she was overwhelmed. She's not great with conflict, and this was way more drama than she was used to dealing with. Dad's a different story, though. When he got on the phone, he was definitely on my side. He said he couldn't believe Rachel had been supporting someone who lied about something so serious and was especially angry that she had kept it from them until now. He said he was going to have a serious talk with Rachel and that he wouldn't tolerate this behavior in our family. Dad's support gave me a sense of relief. Finally, someone in the family understood. The next day brought new drama, though. Rachel called while I was at work, furious as always. She said our parents had chewed her out for siding with Madison and that they had threatened to stop paying for her college if she didn't apologize to me and cut ties with Madison completely. Standing in the morgue cold room, listening to her rage, I could hear that she was accusing me of turning our parents against her. She claimed I was just trying to ruin her life too. "You're the one who dragged them into this, not me," I told her straight up. "If you can't deal with the consequences, that's not my problem." That didn't go over well. She started yelling about how I was selfish and vindictive. I ended up hanging up on her again. Over the next few days, things between Rachel and our parents went from bad to worse. Dad was adamant that Rachel needed to take responsibility for her actions. Mom was caught in the middle, trying to keep the peace. Rachel refused to apologize. She wouldn't even acknowledge that she was wrong to believe Madison. Instead, she doubled down, saying she was just trying to support a friend in need and didn't understand why everyone was ganging up on her. Then Dad dropped the hammer. He told Rachel she had until the end of the week to cut ties with Madison and apologize to me, or they would stop paying her tuition. Rachel called me immediately after, right as I was closing up for the day, blaming me for everything. She said I was tearing the family apart and that I should have just kept quiet instead of escalating things. I couldn't even argue with her anymore. I just told her straight up that I wasn't going to feel bad for standing up for myself. "Madison lied to you, to me, and to everyone else," I said. "Stop being a fool. If you can't see that, then I don't know what else to say." By the end of the week, Rachel still hadn't apologized. True to their word, our parents cut her off financially, just like what happened to her friend that she supported. She called me one last time, crying and begging me to talk to our parents on her behalf. She said she couldn't afford to stay in school without their help and that she didn't want to lose everything over one mistake. I told her I wasn't the one she needed to apologize to. It was our parents. They were the ones making the decision, not me. But Rachel refused to see it that way. She kept saying I started all of this and that it was my fault her life was falling apart. After that call, I finally made the decision to block Rachel's number. I couldn't keep dealing with her constant blame and refusal to take accountability. As much as it hurt to cut her off, I knew it was the only way to protect my own mental health. In the weeks that followed, my parents and I grew closer. The whole ordeal was stressful, but it made us realize how important it was to stick together and support each other. Dad even reached out to Tom to thank him for coming forward with his story. As for Rachel, I haven't heard from her since that last phone call. My parents tried reaching out a couple of times, but she didn't respond. I don't know if she's still in touch with Madison or what she's doing now, but I hope she eventually realizes how toxic that friendship was. I feel like I've done everything I could to set the record straight. Madison's lies nearly destroyed my life, and Rachel's blind loyalty made it even worse. If cutting ties with both of them is what it takes to move on, then so be it. For now, I'm just focused on rebuilding my life and leaving this nightmare behind. I've been diving more into work. Funny how dealing with death daily feels more normal now than what I just went through. If I hear anything new about Rachel, I'll post an update. But for now, I think this chapter is finally closing. It's been about 3 weeks now since everything with Rachel and Madison finally blew up. Things have been quieter, but not exactly peaceful. Even though Rachel and I aren't speaking, her absence still lingers like a ghost in an empty room. I never thought we'd reach this point where our relationship would be this broken. A couple of days after Rachel's meltdown, my parents gave me an update. Apparently, Rachel went back to school, but had to take out student loans to cover tuition and living expenses. Dad said she's not responding to their calls or texts anymore. It doesn't surprise me. Knowing Rachel, she's probably trying to prove a point by cutting them off completely. Part of me feels bad for her. I know taking out loans and juggling work while in college isn't easy, but at the same time, she made her choice. She decided to stand by Madison even after the truth came out, and now she's dealing with the consequences. As for Madison, I haven't heard a single word from her. According to Tom, who's been keeping tabs on the situation, Madison's parents have her on lockdown. She's back home, not allowed to go anywhere unless it's something important like a doctor's appointment. Tom mentioned her parents are still furious about her lying, but they're letting her stay under their roof as long as she follows their rules. According to Tom's updates, Madison is still trying to play the victim. She's telling people she only lied about me because she was scared and didn't know how to handle the situation. She's conveniently leaving out the part where she refused to take a paternity test and tried to manipulate multiple people into taking responsibility. The craziest part, though, is that Madison still hasn't figured out who the actual father is. From what Tom told me, she's too afraid to contact the guy she hooked up with on the dating app. She's still refusing to get a paternity test. It's like she's just waiting for the problem to magically solve itself. I've been trying to move on from all this, but it's been tough. Even though the accusations have stopped, the damage they caused hasn't completely gone away. Some people who saw Madison's Instagram posts still think there's truth to her story, even though she admitted she lied. Social media doesn't come with a rewind button. Once something's out there, it sticks, like formaldehyde on skin. My parents and I have grown closer through all this mess, though. They've been checking in more often, and we've even started having weekly family dinners together. It's comforting to have their support, especially after feeling so isolated when everything was spiraling out of control. Last week during family dinner, Mom brought up Rachel again. We were sitting at their old oak table, the same one we've had since childhood. Rachel's empty chair was like an open wound. Mom said she misses her and wishes things hadn't escalated to the point where Rachel felt the need to cut herself off from family. Dad's a different story, though. He's still angry about the whole thing and thinks Rachel needs to learn the hard way that actions have consequences. For me, I feel like it's not my responsibility to reach out to Rachel. She's the one who chose to believe Madison over me, even when the truth was right there. Until she's ready to admit she was wrong, I don't see how we can move forward. The hardest part of all this is accepting that the relationship I had with my sister might never be the same. We were close growing up. I always thought we'd have each other's backs no matter what. But this whole ordeal has shown me a side of her I didn't know existed. A side that values loyalty to friends over family, even when the friend is blatantly wrong. Like dealing with bodies at work, sometimes things just can't be restored to what they once were. If there's one silver lining to this whole mess, it's forced me to reevaluate all my relationships. I've realized some hard truths. Even people you think are closest to you won't always have your back when it really matters. Like how bodies tell their own stories, people show their true nature when pressure hits. It's a hard pill to swallow, but it's better to know the truth than live in ignorance. As for what's next, I'm taking things one day at a time. My main focus is rebuilding my life and surrounding myself with people who genuinely care about me. I'm not holding out hope for an apology from Rachel or Madison. I've accepted that I can't control their actions, only my own. This year has been messy, painful, and exhausting, like the longest funeral procession ever. But I'm ready to move forward. I've done what I can to clear my name, and now it's up to the people involved to deal with the fallout. All I can do is keep moving forward and hope for better days ahead. Standing in my office, looking out at the cemetery, I realize that sometimes you have to let things die to make room for new life. That's one thing this job has taught me well.